Hello and welcome to the Effortless Swimming Podcast. I've got a very special guest today. I've got the one and only Brent Hayden. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Brandon, thanks for having me, bud.
So I was looking back when you were on the podcast last. It was almost 5 years ago. It was 2018, and a lot has happened since then. Not only with your comeback to swimming, competing at the Tokyo Olympics, but a whole bunch of other stuff which we'll cover today. So I'm excited to chat to you and cover some of these things. I think a great place to start would be that comeback for the Tokyo Olympics because 2018, I'm sure that wasn't anywhere in your horizon. You weren't thinking about a comeback. Where did it all start? How did that comeback originate?
Yeah, it's funny because looking back at 2018, people had been asking me, whether like in person or on social media, if I would ever actually think about doing a comeback. And I had once contemplated it back in 2014. I went for breakfast with my old coach and we talked about it, but I decided that it wasn't really right to do it. I wouldn't have been doing it for the right reasons. I would have been coming back because I felt like a little bit lost, so to speak. And I think a lot of athletes go through that when they retire, that whole like loss of identity thing. I just decided that I didn't want that to be the reason why I went back to swimming, to essentially, go back to my safe space. So yeah, in 2018, I was still not thinking of it. I was, looking forward to, just building my life forward with my wife. We had a bunch of ideas. We were doing a lot of coaching here in Canada. Like we were doing a lot of private lessons. And then strangely enough, I think because some of our swimmers that we were working with started improving so much that their coach actually started to get upset at us because people were talking, and the coach actually pressured the pool to stop allowing us to use lane space at the pool. So we ended up in a situation where we weren't able to supplement our income because it was doing so well, and we're able to pay our bills doing that. So we came into this situation where we had to figure out, what can we do? So that's when we decided that, okay, well, let's just take the curriculum that we've been doing for 10 years. And, we've been doing it in our private lessons, doing it in our clinics. Let's just make it available online. So in 2019, my wife and I went to Lebanon. She was originally from there. So we were staying in this small town. It's not really small, but it was like just outside of Beirut. And we were there mostly for family reasons. But I decided that, while we're here, why don't we look into actually filming that course? So I hopped onto Google Maps. Now, summer of 2019, I'm still not thinking about coming out of retirement. Okay, so this is kind of how everything kind of led to that. So I hop onto Google Maps on satellite view. I'm looking for little tiny blue rectangles, that are near me, and I'm zooming in. I'm checking out all these pools, and I found this pool that was not too far away at this country club called the Jaita Country Club. And I reached out to the owner there, asking if we could check out the pool, perhaps film there. But when I met him, we basically got free reign of the pool until noon every single day. And getting in the water and filming our curriculum, I started to, surprise myself with how good I felt in the water. And I think all the memories or all the good feelings that I used to associate with swimming that I had lost because I retired in 2012, not just because of my back spasms, but also I was suffering from chronic depression. All those good memories and good feelings started to kind of come flooding back. And I actually was doing a clinic in Beirut, and the kids really wanted to see me swim fast. So I got on the blocks. I sprinted a 25 for them. I had my wife film it. So later that evening, I timed it, timed the video, and then it's like, okay, it wasn't horrible. It was better than I thought it'd be. It was like 10 points something. And I sent it to my buddy Brett Hawk, and to get his opinion. And he's like, he was like, dude, you could totally do it. And then I was even talking to Anthony Irvin and Bruno Fratis as well, getting their having them kind of pump me up a little bit and kind of egging me on to actually do it. So yeah, sure enough, sent an email to Swimming Canada to see if they would support the journey. And I'll be honest, I came up with every reason why they could say no, right? Whether I'm too old, I've been out of the water for too long, they want to focus on the younger swimmers, there's perhaps no space in the training centers anymore. They don't want to fund it, literally came up with every single reason why they could say no. So kind of like, I guess, sort of mentally preparing myself for that rejection. But it's like, you know what? I'm not going to say no for them. I'm going to let them say no. So I'm just going to send that email off anyways, and I'll just accept whatever answer they give me. And like, I think it was like maybe the next day, they emailed back and they were just super enthusiastic. So it was a big yes. So had to come home right away and start my journey towards Tokyo.
Were you doing any sort of strength training? How are you keeping fit during your retirement? So you obviously didn't let yourself go over that time. You still had some sort of fitness to be able to still feel good. What was that training like that you were doing outside the pool?
Yeah, this is often a pretty interesting topic because I was not swimming like at all. The only time I really got in the water was when we were doing clinics and I had to just get in and just do like a quick 1 length or 2 length demonstration swim. If I actually went to the pool to swim on my own to get some laps in, I can count on both hands how many times I actually did that over 7 years. It's probably like 6 or 7 times I actually did it. And most of the times I ended up cutting that swim off early because the reason why I retired with struggle with depression, I had developed a very negative relationship with the water. And I would just start to get emotional when I was swimming, and I didn't want to be there. And so I would just get out, after like 1,500 meters or whatever, I just go sit in the hot tub, because when you don't have a coach, you can go sit in the hot tub and no one's going to yell at you to get back in, right? So it was super easy for me to do that. So the only thing that was really keeping me in shape was just strength training, right? I was just in the gym 4 or 5 times a week, and I found that I really loved lifting weights because when you're an athlete training for your competition or whatever your goals are, every single day you go to the pool, you get that kind of like micro sense of accomplishment, right? Whether or not you had a bad practice, you still went and you still got the meters and you still kind of you still accomplished something that day. So when I retired and I was no longer swimming, I found that I was missing that micro dose of accomplishment every single day. There was a little brief period of time where actually I became very irritable. I felt like my personality kind of started to change. So getting back into that routine, right? The routine that kind of like that sort of that discipline that you're used to when you're swimming, like whether you feel like going to swimming or not, you still went, right? Because you had that accountability to still be there. So making myself go to the gym, even on the days where I didn't feel like going to the gym, got me back into that same sort of mindset. And, I could create little micro goals of like, hitting a new, bench press, personal record on the bench press, or even just a sense of like, that was a really good workout and going home, like, cause I got like super sweaty and just like, just feeling good about myself. That was, that kind of, I don't want to say saved me, but it was a very important part of healing my mental health aspect, as well as keeping my body fit and healthy.
Yeah, well, it obviously kept you in the right sort of shape to be able to make that comeback. And it reminds me of like Cam McAvoy, the Australian sprinter, who's big sort of gym program, big focus on the strength side of things. And he's hitting some unbelievable times at the moment. And I know he's swimming probably a little bit more than you were during your retirement, but just a big focus on that strength component.
Yeah, I actually put on I put on over 20 pounds of muscle during that time because when I raced in London, my race weight was 183, and when I was racing in Tokyo, I was 207.
Wow!
So that was one of the things that got me really excited about this comeback was, well, how what is it going to be like actually applying all that new strength I have? Like yes, there's more muscle mass. Your body displaces more water to push through, but what's the trade-off going to be? And we found that, in that 50 free, I almost beat my Canadian record, which was set in a bodysuit. So like,
Jeez.
So like I'm feeling pretty good, and I wasn't even training for the 100. And I still got under 48 seconds. So like, like what do you do? But it was awesome to see Cam McAvoy though do that, because it was maybe 6 or 8 months ago. He and I had a call. So he came to me to ask me a bunch of my advice of like what I was doing and how I was training, especially as an older athlete and that. So I don't know which parts of my experience he took, because obviously he's Cameron McAvoy. He knows what he's doing. But it was really cool just to have him actually reach out and ask me for or ask me just to share my experience.
That's
so when,
really
so when
cool.
he did that, it was amazing. I was like, that was really cool to see.
Yeah. Well, I was, I'm trying to think when it was. I think maybe late last year, I was in Brisbane and I was doing some filming of one of the Australian swimmers, Kia Melverton, who's a distance swimmer. And when we were going to the pool, Cam was coming out of the same pool, and Cam and Kia were just having a chat. And he was talking about his training. He said, like, I'm doing a little bit of swimming, but I'm just hitting the gym, but I'm feeling really strong. And my times aren't quite there yet, but I'm feeling really strong. And I thought in the back of my mind, this is going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next 6 months as he's working towards world champs and then ultimately Olympic Games, and just seeing amazing returns on that strength training.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this world champs is going to be super exciting for many reasons, but definitely eyes will definitely be on Cameron to see what he does there.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Canadian swimming, so what do you think? Why do you think they were so supportive to get you back? Like, I'm thinking having someone who's been there and done that, people look up to, having that sort of leadership there can be great for directing the culture of a group. Do you think that was some of the reasons? Why do you think they were so supportive to get you back?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest reason, was just having me around the deck and just kind of sharing that experience and just kind of taking on a little bit of that leadership role, because the women's side have tons of amazing swimmers on the women's side, but the men's side was relatively still young. We had obviously Yuri Kissel was probably the most senior swimmer on the team. So I really think that was probably the biggest reason coming in, and just kind of pushing them, especially in that relay, to help those guys kind of find that extra level. Also, like, don't want to how do I say this? Like, I think also just kind of like having like a young, or like an old guy kind of come in and have these young guys that were kind of like maybe used to winning, and have kind of like me come in and like, no, this is how you swim, right? And kind of like just like kind of push them and kind of show them a little bit of what's possible. So definitely was pushing those guys.
Well, talk me through that relay. So you're on the Canadian team, obviously. You led out. Well, you guys made the final first of all. You led out the team, and ended up going 47.99. So were you 37 at the time? 37 years of age?
Yeah, 37.
Yeah, so oldest person to swim under 48 by like 5 years, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, Jason Lezak. God, I remember when he did that in was it Beijing? But I'll still remember that anchor swim he did. Right, we were over there in like lane 1 or lane 2 or something like that when he did that, and so to be able to like have his name there, and now like seeing my name above his there, it's like we I just want to say, like, we kind of like we all stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So the fact that Lezak did that, showed us that we can keep being competitive as we get older. And now that I've done it, I think we're going to be seeing, like, I don't expect my name to be at the top of that list for much longer. I think we're going to have swimmers that are now opening up their eyes to the longevity of what's possible. And probably like maybe even after World Champs, we might already have another oldest swimmer ever under 40 seconds, or after Paris, right? So, but it's cool to be able to see my name at the top of that for the time being.
What was it like hitting the wall and looking at the time and going, "Wow, that was that was unexpected"? How was that?
I mean, I think everything kind of leading up to that moment, it wasn't necessarily just the 47.99. Like at our Olympic trials, we were at risk of not even having a team to qualify for the Olympic Games because we were ranked 15th, and only top 16 actually get to go. So we came together to do a time trial to hopefully just get us a better time just to get a better time so we can feel a little bit safer in case other teams behind us did a trial and knocked us out. And I think we moved up to 12th, I think, with that time trial. And one thing that I was telling the guys was the story of watching the South Africans at the 2004 Olympics, right? Was it, I think, Darian Townsend, Lyndon Ferns, Ray Kneethling, and Roland Schoeman. Nobody expected them to win a medal, and they came out. They believed in themselves when no one else would, and they won the gold medal. So I wanted to kind of share that experience with them. So I used that as an example, and just like we went out there, I also told them like there's still a chance that this could be it. So swim this race like it's a final in the heats. And so we did. Every guy stepped up. We had Ruslan Gaziev, who was who swam as our alternate in the heats, and he really stepped up big time as well. So they got us that lane, so that gave us the opportunity. And still, people still didn't believe in us. We're like, what, guys, like we have a chance to medal, right? And I guess leading off that relay, I knew it was going to hurt coming back. Because I didn't train necessarily focusing on the 100. I was training for the 50 because I felt that was probably the most realistic place or realistic event for me to be doing a comeback at my age in such a short amount of time, right? But I guess my coach, was secretly training me for 100 without telling me, right? I just show up and just do what my coach tells me to do. So I just wanted to not put any limits on what my body was capable of on the second length. I wasn't going to save anything for the swim back. It's funny. I was just thinking about that movie Gattaca. There's a scene in that movie where the guys are swimming out, and the one guy, he's wanting to turn around and swim back, but he doesn't want to get beaten. And finally, he asks the guy, how are you doing this? And he says, I never saved anything for the swim back. So I've always thought of that line, and so in that moment, that's kind of the way I decided to approach that race, as don't save anything for the swim back, because I don't know what my body is capable in this moment, or what it's capable of. So I just went out as fast as I could, and I came back, and when that pain's taken over your body, there's something about being on a relay when you've got three other guys that you're swimming with that kind of helps elevate you and push through that pain just a little bit more sometimes. And I touched that wall, and I turned around, and I see Josh's feet enter that water. And in that moment, it was the first thing that went through my mind was that I feel like this was kind of like a passing of a torch, this moment, because here I am at 37 years old. Josh was born after I made my first national team, right, at the 2002 Commonwealth Games in Manchester. So I kind of feel like that moment is kind of like a passing of the torch. And then I noticed that time and seeing that 47.99, and the last time I saw a 47 up there was the 2012 Olympics 9 years earlier. I felt really proud of what I did, and I knew that I did what I needed to do to give ourselves a chance, and we almost won a medal. We were so close.
Yeah, I remember watching that because the Aussies got third and just pipped you out, which is great for the Aussies. But an amazing story.
Kyle Chalmers, man. I mean, he's Kyle Chalmers for a reason, right? He had a tremendous anchor swim to get us on the end. But even though we missed the medal, I think one of my favorite swimming moments in my career was actually after that moment. And I just grabbed the other 3 guys, and we just like went for like a group huddle, like a group hug. And I showed them, I pointed at the board and I said, nobody believed that we would be there. I know we didn't get a medal, but we achieved way more than anybody else believed that we were capable of achieving.
Absolutely.
So
and
it was really cool.
I mean, those guys will carry that forever. Like those relay swims, when it's you and some other guys, like it's such a different feeling than the individuals. And I mean, you probably got a very strong bond with those guys as well after going through that build up and then the event and almost medaling. Like what a great way to build those tight knit bonds.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish I could have stuck around for Paris because, like I say, like I really bonded with those guys, and it would be really great to be there. But at the same time, like I know my time there was over, and I did what I needed to do, and I passed that on, and so it's really cool just watching them carrying that forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, now you're doing obviously some coaching during your retirement, but you've been doing a lot of just passing on your knowledge, specifically technique. You're running clinics. You've got the online course as well. I'd love to dig into some of the details about how you like to. I guess what's the process you like to go through when you're working with people or you're running these clinics? What are some of those core things that you like to pass on to the groups that you're coaching?
Yeah, so we always take a step-by-step approach. The way I kind of describe it is kind of like putting IKEA furniture together, right? Because if you skip one step, the whole thing has to come apart. You got to start from the foundation. Because if you're trying to fix one thing in the technique, a lot of times you can't fix that until you fix other things in the technique, because that might be a result of something that's happening 3, 4, 5 steps back in the chain, right? Like your recovery might be doing that because your hips are in a poor position, or you don't have good alignment, or you're not rotating enough, or you're holding your breath in your rib cage incorrectly, right? Or you're breathing into your chest rather than your lungs. So we always, no matter the skill level of the swimmer, we always run them through the same progression, right? So we always start with breathing and buoyancy before going on to alignment, rotation, the kick, right? The kick, then the rotation before we even get to the recovery and the pull. So it's always super cool though when you even take like a really advanced swimmer who doesn't think they really have that much room to improve. And we always do a stroke count at the start of the clinics, right? For 50 meters, we have a rule: 3 dolphin kicks off every wall. So I don't know if you've seen my Instagram posts. I do a lot of those stroke count videos where I say you got to do 3 dolphin kicks off each wall, because underwater kick is still part of pool swimming. So I still want them to still practice that with the breakout. And then they run through the whole clinic, and then we do the stroke counts again at the end, and over 95% of the swimmers always knock off strokes, which is obviously I guess like the overall philosophy is, if you can become a more efficient swimmer, you can become a faster swimmer, because it's always technique, and it's always about minimizing the resistance you need to overcome, right? And then you add the speed and the power on top of it if you're a sprinter.
Yeah, I love that approach, and it's something that I had to learn as a coach. It's like early days, it's just like, I'll just change this, but it's like, oh, okay, that's not really working because we haven't started early enough down in the order of steps there. And I think
you probably also experience this too, is like a lot of swimmers too, especially when they are experienced, actually they tend to sometimes it's a little bit hard to get them to actually go back to the basics sometimes. So they almost feel like sometimes it's a little bit too beginner sometimes, but if you're actually able to get them through and get them through that, they always are going to be able to improve or be able to fix that thing that they've been struggling to fix for so long. So so one thing that I always try to communicate to the advanced swimmers, because a younger swimmer or not necessarily a younger swimmer, but like a less experienced swimmer, they're a bit more like a blank slate. But an older or more experienced swimmer who has developed that muscle memory and that mechanical like patterning in their technique, it's really hard to undo a lot of those things. So being able to actually get them to be willing to go back to the basics and build it back up is really key sometimes.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I had a running coach on the podcast last year, an Aussie guy, Paul McKinnon, called it the Balanced Runners, his brand, and he was invited to go over to Oregon to coach some of the elite Nike runners, so work with some of their athletes. And I asked him, like, what are you sharing with these guys? Like, you're working with the top 0.1% of runners. What are you going over and teaching them? And he shared that's like, I'm just kind of I'm going through the same stuff that I'd go through with a beginner or intermediate runner. We're just going through the basics. We're going through the fundamentals because, like, quite often when you're an athlete, you just do what you do and it becomes intuitive, but you don't really think about how it's broken down, and you aren't necessarily it can be hard for a lot of athletes to pass on the knowledge of how they're swimming so well. They can do it well, but they can't pass it on. They haven't really thought about it that way. So when you get a coach, and is that something that you experienced with in the early days?
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like I've always been a little bit intuitive with how to communicate things because I was not a good swimmer when I was growing up. I failed swimming lessons twice. That's one of like those key point
badge of honor
pointers there. Yeah. Failed swimming lessons. So like I had to learn how to break things down into the simplest terms that I could understand, and a lot of it came down to things that I could visually see, because I actually have an auditory I don't want to call it a disability. It's just something that I kind of struggle with. It's called a central auditory processing disorder. So a lot of times when a coach will say something to me, even if I'm paying full attention, it's just in the ear and out the other side, and I can't recall because it doesn't actually go into my short-term memory. So a lot of times things have to be repeated. But if a coach could explain something to me visually, and I can actually see in my head what they're saying, right, rather than just the words, actually have like an image, that became a lot easier. So when I started teaching other swimmers how to do it, I was just I'd really try to kind of paint a picture of it. But also like I also have to credit my wife like big time, right? My wife Nadina, because she was a competitive swimmer, but she broke her back in her teens, and she still went on to compete at nationals for like a couple of years, like after she broke her back. But eventually, living in a back brace and stuff and losing the feeling in her legs, like she had to stop. But her sister actually owned one of the top private swim schools in Western Canada. So she actually redeveloped their entire like upper level curriculum for the school. So we took like my high performance with her sort of learn to swim methodology, and we kind of like found this sort of like little marrying of the two to kind of like create that system. So as much as like, I think I'm pretty good at communicating that to the swimmers. Really, she is a huge credit to why the system works. I have to give it to her. Yeah,
it makes me think of the amount of different coaches and people that I've taken in information from, and like I know where a lot of it comes from. Like I could know the coach to credit, but like over the last 15, 16 years that I've been coaching and then swimming for the last like 25 years, it's like you just get all these little things and you tend to sort of pick one out, maybe a cue that seems to work or a drill, whatever it might be, and you become this amalgamation of all the knowledge that's being passed on, and then you sort of spin it into your own way of communicating things. And I think that's what makes coaching so fun, because you can learn from so many different people, and it's a challenge to want to have all these different things to be able to pull out when you need it for different swimmers, because not everyone's going to learn the same. They need different cues. They need different ways to think about it. So just trying to have as many tools in your tool belt that you can pull out when needed is the challenge. And it's a never ending game when it comes to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because like you could say like once one way to one swimmer, they'll get it right away, but then that swimmer over there is not going to get it. You say it
Mm.
like three different ways, they still don't get it. So then you have to show them how to do it. Then they get it. But then that swimmer over there, you have to pull them out of the water and have them go through the motions, and then they get it right. So try to hit on like all three different teaching ways, so that way everybody is able to actually be able to move forward. Because everybody learns differently, right?
Mm.
But I think no matter the kind of swimmer you are, the fundamentals of say, you know, if we're talking freestyle, the fundamentals of freestyle are the same, right? You can personalize it according to the distance you're racing. If you're, you know, short distance speed or long distance endurance, but the core fundamentals are the same, and so that's where we really try to focus in on that and get everybody mastering those fundamentals. Because as you said earlier, it really is about mastering like becoming masters of like the simple parts. Because I think people honestly they make swimming way more complicated, right? So the more you're able to break the swimming down into their individual pieces and realizing how simple each individual piece of the stroke is, then it only becomes complicated with just trying to add them all together, right?
Yeah.
Just the sheer number of simple things you need to do is really where the complication is. So don't complicate each individual part, because it's already a lot of information.
Yeah, that's so true. It's because when you break it down in the simple format of, okay, let's get the breathing right, then we go, you know, head, body, kick, rotation, recovery, and then pull. It's quite a few steps, but in each element, it's pretty simple to be able to, you know, just kind of know what you need to do there. And especially with like, there's obviously so much information out there. We've got podcasts, got all of our videos, and people can consume so much, and then there's just so many things in their head where they just get, I think, confused when they go to the pool. So I think it's just, if you can just pick one thing to focus on, start early in that chain, whether it's, you know, breathing or head and body, and just take time, spend some weeks just focusing on it, and just kind of shut off all the other noise. And that way you're going to see some improvement. Because if today you're working on your head position, tomorrow you're working on your catch, the next day you're working on your kick, nothing's going to stick. So it's just best to have that patience and just go, all right, I'm going to choose one thing, I'm going to shut off the noise, and I'm just going to practice that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And so you've been coaching on Skillest a bit as well over the last couple of weeks or last couple of months. So platform that we use at our clinics, and people sort of send videos through for analysis. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like what you're seeing from those swimmers that are sending their videos through, and how you're finding that online communication. Because when I first started coaching online, I thought it might work. I don't know. I'll see if it does. But it can actually be better for many people, because they've got the time to go and practice these things on their own time. There's no pressure of a coach standing there. It's like, I better get this right in the next half hour, or it's like, that's kind of a waste of a lesson. They're much more relaxed, and they can actually see some changes as a result of it. So I'd be curious just to get your thoughts on how you're finding that online coaching through Skillest.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it. We did like online video analysis, for me when I was training for Tokyo, because back in the day, we didn't have access to platforms like this. So what we actually used to do was we would actually fly to Tallinn, Estonia, to work with this biomechanist there, Rain Hallian. I don't know if you've heard that name. So he's a legend, going way back to working with the swimmers in the back in the USSR, and he really was like a pioneer for doing video analysis. Like, he'd break the stroke down into ways that, like, still don't even know how he was able to break some things down. But now with the power of the internet, when I was training for Tokyo, we didn't need to go to Estonia, which, I mean, especially with COVID, we also couldn't. I mean, I love Tallinn. We would go there like after the World Cup, the European leg, so we're already over there. But we would do the analysis, or we did an analysis sitting down with him, and he broke my stroke down on the screen, because we'd film it and send it to him. So So even at that level, we were already kind of used to with first in person, and then we sit down afterwards, go over everything. And now we got the power of the internet. We can just can do it remotely. But I had already been, I guess I've been doing it for the last few years, through my Swimming Secrets program, because swimmers can make a lot of improvements following the program. Granted that they actually start the program with the intention of actually following the program and not just watching it to get some tips and tricks and just trying to just go and just apply to their regular stroke and not actually taking the time to go through the drills. But the ones that do, they always do find improvement. But there are still, personal details that are going to differ from person to person to person that you can look at and actually be able to communicate that to the swimmer. So luckily now with Skillest, because I was using another app before, and the workflow was just so tedious because I have to download it, put it into like iMovie, create the movie, upload it into the app, download to the app, upload it to the Google Drive, send them the email. And half the time it wouldn't, like something would break with like the Google Drive link or something. And the whole workflow was really tedious. But now with Skillest, everything is just all done in one app, right? So swimmers just go in there, they just upload that video, and I could just download it quickly, start playing it, go frame by frame, got all the analytical tools there that can draw the angles, draw little arrows, say your hand should be like this, or your shoulders here, you're pulling outside your body line here, you're lifting your head up too much here, right? And then just basically just submit that to them, and then even film like an explanation video of myself. So now I'm on camera showing the hand positions or the head position, and further explaining the things that I was explaining in there. And then I can just chat directly with the swimmers all inside that app. So now the turnaround time for when a swimmer submits their video and gets that feedback is way faster. And so, the faster they can get the feedback, the faster and also more excited they are to jump back in the pool and start working on it right away as well. I know you've been on the platform for a number of years. So also really interested to hear, like, what are your thoughts since you've been on it for so much longer?
Yeah, so Baden, who started Skillest, I had coached him a little bit in the Masters squad that I was coaching quite a few years back. And so that's kind of how we got introduced to each other. But prior to that, when we were running clinics, we were using Coach's Eye. Everyone, I think most coaches are pretty familiar with Coach's Eye.
That's the one I was using. Yeah.
And the analysis tools were good, but I used to have to hire someone for 2 days, so Monday, Tuesday after our weekend clinics. And this person their sole job was to download the videos, export them, rename them, upload them, send them out. It's like that's 2 full days of work after doing a clinic, and it was very tedious, and there'd often be some issues with the exporting of videos and all this sort of stuff, and it was just very hard work. So we started using Skillest as soon as I found out about it, which was about 7 years ago. So it was quite early days, and it
Wow.
literally made our coaching, our clinics, just so much easier to run. So it was just, the tech side didn't have to be difficult. It was just very easy, hit upload, and then everyone's got their videos, and you've got that communication as well. So after I run clinics, like I say to people at the end, I'd love to hear how you're going in 2, 3, 4 weeks time. If you're improving and it's all feeling good, great. Like, I want to know. If you're like, it's not quite clicking, let me know as well, because maybe we need to exaggerate a change. Maybe we need to take a slightly different approach. So to be able to just do that really easily in the app, it makes a huge difference for the athlete and for myself, just to be able to have that constant communication so that people can get the results that they're after. So especially for swimmers when they're recording themselves, it can be challenging enough to get that footage and then to upload it and all of that. So to kind of take away one of those steps that's that can maybe hinder their ability to do it, or just go, it's a bit too much work, I don't really want to do it. Like I think it's really good for the sport itself, because we've got access to underwater footage from Olympic Games and World Champs. We can see pretty much any swimmer from any angle with the footage that we've got. So to be able to sort of use that as an example and to show people what we want to do, and people can record themselves and compare it. When someone sees themselves compared to someone like yourself, they go, oh, okay, I can see why I'm not swimming 22 or 21 for my 50 freestyle. It really becomes clear when you've got that visual comparison, which I like with Skillest, because you can just pull up those videos and compare them frame by frame.
Yeah, no, it's super cool, and it's so easy just to do it all in the app too. And what I also love too is, like after you submitted the videos, like you can literally, like, it's not like you just submit the videos and say, all right, here's your analysis, good luck, right? Like they can literally, if they have any questions about it, they can ask you, and then you can even, like, you can just right there quickly on the app, like whether you're on the bus heading somewhere, you can just sit there and be answering people like on the go. So it's really great that you're able to support them on the back end, so you don't ever leave anybody with any questions, or if they just didn't understand something, you're leaving them confused, right? So it's really cool. Even like last night, I had a student, Mike, who was he had a bunch of questions after my last analysis. So right after this meeting, like, I'm going to be filming myself and submitting those back to him. So the ability for me to share my knowledge, whether it's through the Swimming Secrets program or through the Skillest app, I think has got to be the most rewarding aspect of it, because I feel like if I just competed as a swimmer, made it to the Olympics and retired and never did anything with swimming again, I think not just from me, but like I think for a lot of athletes, it's such a huge loss for the swimming community, right? So the more access athletes have to be able to share their knowledge and be able to work directly with other swimmers, it's going to elevate the sport so much more. And the other thing that's really cool too, like I've got so many thoughts like running through my head, is that you don't need to be an elite swimmer to get access to this program. You don't need to be training for the Olympics. You could be just a casual swimmer that just picked up swimming, a few weeks ago and just no idea where to start. And we can help, we can look at you and give you guidance that way. So this type of expertise or like coaching never would have been available to the general public before. Because like I said, I was working with Rain Hallian for so many years, but we were elite levels. Like the average swimmer wouldn't be able to walk in and be able to get that from him back then. So I think it's just it's really cool. And I get a lot of I don't want to say self-worth, but it makes me feel really good when I get to impact stores like that and seeing them improve, and then get the excited messages back when they get that kind of like eureka or that sort of clicking moment.
Yeah, what comes to mind there for me is like if I meet someone new, like you're at don't go to parties anymore. I'm too old for that sort of stuff. But if you go to like a barbecue or something, and someone asks about what you do, I tell them I'm a swim coach, and they're like, oh, so you coach kids? And I'm like, no, and like we do underwater filming and analysis, and you work with elite swimmers. It's like, no, I work with everyday people who might be swimming a couple times a week. It's probably someone like you, it's just, So I think no one sort of thinks that there's that there's people who are just adults and they're swimming a few times a week or doing triathlon. They don't think about that ability to have that kind of underwater filming and analysis. And there's not much of that around. So that's what I really like about being able to do what we're doing, is pass that on to people who are really hungry to learn and get better. And when you attract the right people and you work with the right people who fit with your message and your style of coaching, and they want to learn from you, it's very rewarding from a coach's perspective. And I think even like for me, I think it's like I'm not that competitive anymore. Like I don't really care about winning races and stuff. Like once I'm in there, I'm competitive, but to me, that's not a big draw card right now. It's like I'd prefer to be the very best coach that I can, and I get a lot more out of seeing other people achieve success in the water. I don't know how you feel about that, like where your head's at in terms of that competitive. I mean, I think you seem like a born competitor, so you'll probably be 80 years old and racing masters and wanting to break world records.
I don't know. Like it's funny because it's funny. Like I even just posted on Threads. I made a joke yesterday on my on that new Threads app. I was like, therapist, tell me, where do you think your competitive nature came from? And the picture is a screenshot of my TV because my old neighbor was over and we're playing GoldenEye on my N64 and I won. It's like, if I'm playing GoldenEye, I'm like uber competitive. But I don't know, like with swimming, I feel like yes, there obviously is that competitive nature too, but I think deep down, I've always just kind of had the instinct or the desire to just see how fast I could go, right? Especially, I struggled with swimming in my early years. I was not winning races by any stretch. Got a lot of runner-up medals or ribbons. But I think I just learned to look at the clock more, like the time, more than the actual result. So I think for me, it was always just about pushing my own limits and, and then if I can do that, let the results take care of themselves. Like I actually remember this moment when I was a summer club swimmer, because I was a summer club swimmer until I was almost 15 years old. And so I did summer club for 10 years. I was doing lots of other sports too. Like I did karate, I did a little bit of water polo, played piano, right? Probably missing some other ones, baseball, soccer. But I remember in my last year of summer club, or what ended up being my last year of summer club, I remember telling this other swimmer that I wanted to go winter, which was the term that we use in summer club for swimmers who trained year round, right? The higher level swimmers. And I remember he looked at me and he said, well, if you're going to do that, you can forget about winning, because this was like my last year of summer club was kind of like the first time that I was now like the one that was winning all the races in summer club and breaking the record. So it took 10 years of, I don't want to say like of sucking, but 10 years of, development to get to the point where I was actually a pretty good swimmer. But he said that, if you're going to do that, you can forget about winning. And I looked at him and I remember saying, that's not the point. I just want to see how fast I could go. Right. And I think when I had my best races, yes, there's always that voice in the back of your head that wants to win. But I think if the thought that was in the forefront was just, if I can just take care of my performance, so I can control all the things I can control in my lane. So that's, my start, my dive, my underwaters, my breakout, how I'm holding the water, my stroke rate, my breathing pattern. That's my space between those two lane ropes. I can't control what everybody else is doing in their lane ropes. So when I had that thought process at the forefront, and then, having the motivation of winning kind of in the background, that's when I swam my best. But I think when the result became my forefront thought and started thinking about that medal, that's when I struggled. And so case in point, that's what happened at the Beijing Olympics. A lot of people ask me like, well, how do you go from world champion in 2007 to not even making the final in the Olympics? Because I was so focused on winning the medal that I forgot to swim fast in the semifinal. Right? Because in my mind, right. Because in my mind, I didn't need to win the semifinal, right? That race would be tomorrow. So I only needed to just go fast enough to make the final. There was a bit of other thing I was kind of struggling with was that I was the number one reason why our team didn't medal in the 4x200 relay in Athens. So I felt like I had a horrible leg in that relay because my alarm went off at 3:30 in the morning and it said it was 7. I got up and everything, and then when I realized what happened, I spent the whole day until the race from like 3:30 onwards, like panicking. So I was like literally in the ready room, feeling like I was about to fall asleep. My coach like handed me like a Coke to try to give me some sugar to sort of like wake up, and it was just a disaster. So there's a part of me that wanted to make up for that relay, and the 4x2 relay final was the same night as the 100 freestyle semifinal. So like I told myself, I don't need to win today. That medal will be tomorrow, and I'll save some energy for this 4x2. Well, ended up 12th. I missed the final by just under 0.2 of a second. And so I channeled all that rage, all that energy into the relay, and I dove in on the third leg. When I dove into the water, we were seventh. When I touched the wall, we were second. So I moved us up five. Yeah, I mean, I think I touched my feet on the wall at the 100-meter split in 49 seconds. So like clearly I had energy to swim faster in that semifinal. So that's what I mean. Like sometimes like you just stop thinking about that result, and in the moment just see how fast like you can go, and the results will take care of themselves. Don't try to strategize things so much. I mean, obviously there's some strategizing in certain situations, but yeah.
Yeah, that's I really like the point you made there, just about when it's competing with yourself, everything's in your control, and that's much more motivating than trying to beat someone else, trying to win the gold medal. You've got no control over that. And so when you're thinking about that, to me, that's kind of, produces a bit of anxiety. It's like, oh, well, what's going to happen on race day? And like, that's where a lot of that doubt can creep in, and it just takes everything out of your control. So yeah, it's just always wanting to try and beat your own PBs, beat your own times, and it keeps it in your locus of control. So it's
remembering your why. I think that's a big point. People get up on the blocks and they think they're just swimming for times and medals, and honestly, like if that's all you're swimming for, you're not going to go very far. I think people need a deeper burning reason why they compete. And I think when I got to the Beijing Olympics and I just started focusing on this little gold shiny thing that I saw hanging around my neck, I became so fixated on that I really lost my purpose and my reason why I was always doing this.
Do you think that with your results did you win in 2012? Did you win the 100 free?
Bronze.
Do you think like with that success, and that brought a lot of media, a lot of attention, and like I guess it really sort of put you in the spotlight after that? Do you feel like that attention afterwards is kind of why you may have been so focused on the result come 2016? Was that part of it, you think, or like what are your thoughts around that?
No, I was retired in 2016, so like I was done. Right, like 2012, I was totally done with the sport, and I definitely got a lot of media attention, while I was in London, back home, but I didn't get any real media attention when I actually got home, because after London, because I announced my retirement actually before the closing ceremonies, I was just like, that's it. This is just a really great way for me to, because I mean, I was spiraling into depression. 2 weeks before the Olympic Games, I couldn't walk for 4 days. So like that was the worst year of my life, training and trying to keep my body moving forward. Like I actually almost had a moment where I almost quit before the Olympic Games when we were at staging camp in Olbia, Italy. And I remember my coach asked me what was wrong, and I looked at him and said, I don't want to retire before the Olympics. And I was all like hunched over, and I was in so much pain. Like I couldn't use my legs to get into bed. Like I remember grabbing the bed sheets to pull myself onto the bed just so I could go to sleep. That's how bad it was. So I didn't think that I was even going to get to compete. And I had all these thoughts in my head, like, well, I've already failed at the Athens Olympics. I failed again at the Beijing Olympics. What are people going to think of me when I go to my third, probably my final Olympics, and I fail again? Like, is that going to be how people remember me? Right? Succeed at everything except the Olympics. So I had that thought in my head, and I started thinking like, well, what if I just retire before the Olympics? Then I'll be able to avoid all that, right? And so I kind of told my coach that, and he kind of threw my thoughts back in my face, and I just remember just getting like incredibly upset at that, and I blew up, like my whole top popped off, and I just started like yelling. I was like, picture a guy in like a back spasm trying to like be angry. Probably didn't look very good, but I let out all of my emotion. And the next day I noticed I felt better. So sometimes I feel like when we're struggling, we bottle it up so much inside that we're not able to heal because, you know, your thoughts, like you manifest your own thoughts sometimes. And I think sometimes my thoughts are preventing me from actually healing, because as soon as I let it all out, I was much better the next day. And then one day after that, I was back in the water swimming as if nothing had ever happened. And then, yeah, my rib was out the day of my 100 free final, but I was like, you know, my goggle straps were all messed up. So if you watch the video, I'm the last person putting my goggles on, because I literally looked at my goggles like, oh, my straps are messed up. So I had a moment where I was like, I think my goggles might fall off, but I always swim outside without goggles. So I just reminded myself that if my goggles fall off, I know I can still see. Because like, I think in that moment, I had gone through so many struggles and challenges, because they were preparing me for the moment when I needed to perform when everything seemed to be going wrong, right? Because you hear all the time, athletes often succeed when things aren't going well. It's very rare an athlete can get to the Olympics and have a perfect day, you know. There's always something that wants to throw them off. So a lot of times, like, those struggles are actually preparing them to be able to perform it in those environments. So I thought back to all those struggles I went through, you know, whether it was Athens, whether it was Beijing, whether it was getting Delhi belly at the 2010 Commonwealth Games. I was so sick there, but that's when I went on my first, again, the first swimmer ever under 48 seconds without a bodysuit. I was so sick that day, vomiting. And actually in that moment, I reminded myself when I was like a little kid in a pup tent at the Summer Club Provincials. I was vomiting, but I did all best times in the meet because I just didn't want to throw up in front of everybody. So I swam even faster just so I get out of the pool faster. So I reminded myself, if that kid can do that, then I can do that here. So that's something that I try to tell to other swimmers too. Like, you might be going through these challenges, but there's going to be a reason in the future when you're going to be faced with another challenge that you're going to be better prepared to handle it. Because all those struggles are just going into your experience bank, because you're going to be able to lean back on them at some later point. I'll be honest, I can't remember how I got into this topic, because it just totally like went over this way. I totally forgot where that was supposed to go, but
no, I was putting Beijing at 2016, which was Rio was also 2016.
Gotcha.
So in my head, I'm like, okay, that's why I was connecting the dots the wrong way. But it makes so much. In hindsight, things make so much sense, doesn't it? And you can see all those terrible things that happen, all those challenges you go through. Looking back, it's like, God, I learned a good lesson there, and I probably couldn't have learned it any other way. And I'm so glad that happened. But at the time, it's very challenging to be able to accept it, and you've got to go through the emotions of dealing with it. But looking back, you know, the best lessons are learned with the hard lessons. So but it is hard to accept that at the time.
Sport simulates life in like the most extreme ways sometimes.
Yeah, it's like in a way, a very very safe way, in a way to emulate life, right? Like it's a forced way where you can put these challenges on yourself and go through them, and and develop your ability to push through them in other areas of your life. And that's why I think so many of my good friends are my swimming friends, because you go through those challenges together, and you want to be working with people who have been through challenges. They're more interesting, they're more resilient, and you want people who have had some tough things happen in their life. And especially when you get out of competition, you get out of elite level sport, you kind of need to introduce some things so that you're still going through some challenges, whether it's a hard session at the gym, those physical challenges, or maybe you're stretching yourself with your business and all these different things. Like, I think we need to introduce these challenges ourselves so we're still keeping sharp with things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so true. Like, you're able to be ready for so much more in life because of sports. So like, I always tell parents, like, it doesn't matter if your kid's good at sports or not, right? Your kid doesn't need to be the best swimmer on the team or the best player on the team. Like, it doesn't matter. If they go on and become an amazing athlete, great. But that you shouldn't be putting them in the sport with that being the end goal. You want to be putting them in the sport because they're going to be able to learn so many things in life that sometimes, I don't want to say only sport, but that sport is able to actually teach them. You're also going to be able to learn teamwork, problem solving, goal setting. You're going to make new friends, right? So like there's so many other benefits. And so sometimes I feel like, I'm talking to parents and they think that if their kid isn't excelling at it, they're questioning like, well, should I even bother putting my kid in the sport? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Because if my parents took me out of sport, like I was a struggling swimmer. If my parents had that mindset to pull me out just because I wasn't excelling at it after like 6-7 years, I wouldn't have been able to go on and, achieve the things that I was able to achieve and be the person that I am today. So any parent who might be watching this, if your kid is struggling in the sport, but they love it, just keep them in it if you can. Just keep them in it.
Yeah, it always reminds me of what a guy who coaches Wayne Goldsmith. He always says there's no champion 9-year-olds. Like there's no such thing as a champion 9-year-old swimmer, because it just, things change, and really, like, who cares if you're the champion 9-year-old in your club or your state or even nationally? Like, who cares? Like, if you're telling that story when you're 50 years of age that I was the fastest 50 freestyler at 9 years of age in my state, it's like, well, are you a good person? If I had to choose from my kid winning an Olympic gold medal but being an asshole, or being a great person that people want to be around and is doing good things, I know which one I'd rather choose. I think that's what you can learn from sport, and there's only going to be a select couple of people who are achieving those high ranks. So I think the main thing is, are they developing the skills to be a good person and a resilient person? And swimming is one of those sports where if you got to get up early and you've got to put in the hard yards to have success. I think it teaches it's got to be one of the hardest sports to train for and be good at. And I think that's a good thing. That's why it produces good people.
Yeah, well said.
Well, Brent, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. We've gone an hour here. We could keep going for another hour, but I appreciate your time.
We could keep going for sure.
So,
obviously a huge, gratitude and thank you for having me on your show again. It's been awesome catching up with you. We'll stay in touch even more. And also, I'm just super excited that of what you and I are going to be able to do with the swimming community with the new Skillest app together as well. That's going to be really cool.
Well, the fact that people can get analysis, get feedback, advice from someone like yourself, as you said, like that was not available even a couple of years ago, really. It just opens the world up and the experience up for so many people. So thanks so much for being on the show. If you'd like to work with Brent, I'll put those links in the show notes with Skillest and his website as well. So jump on those links there. And Brent, I'll make sure it's not 5 years between drinks again. I'll get you back on a lot sooner than that.
All right, thanks, Brent. Oh, I just want to say too, you won't believe how many times when people email me or send me messages, they call me Brenton. No, all the time. I always get a message, "Hey, Brenton." I'm like, I'm not Brenton. Brenton's over at Effortless Swimming, but it's all the time.
I can't tell you how many times I get called Brendan in an email. So it's like,
definitely that too. But yeah, it's. I always get a good laugh when I get that.
Yeah, that's so. It's I didn't even just chatting now. I didn't even click that. It's like Brenton. Like, obviously, I know that's the case. And the first time we talk, it's like, isn't that funny? But just because sort of known you for quite a while, it's like that's just what it is. But there's not many Brentons out there, and there's probably fewer Brents out there. So it's that's funny. If you are, we'll
get a three-way podcast with Brett Hawk on there one of these days too.
let's do
really confuse some people.
And have someone host that podcast and try and get the names right. It'll be like a parent trying to tell their kid, when I've got 2 kids and I'm always calling the other one the other name, and they hate it. So let's get Brett on the podcast and we'll make a meal of it.
Yeah, absolutely, bud.
Thanks so much, Brent. We'll talk soon.